Hey guys, I'm Marlene Boswell and I'm here to tell you some stories about Alaska. But before we get started, I have to tell you another story. We're here in Clemson, South Carolina today, and this is a retake from the original video we shot at the beautiful Fox Theater in Atlanta a few weeks ago. I'd love to tell you the reason for the redo was weather conditions, but in all honesty, it was me. Anyway, like the warrior I am, I picked myself up, I put on my combat boots, literally, and we're here to do a retake. So, before we get started, has anyone here been to Alaska before? Quite a few. Okay. So, as a lot of you know, Alaska is huge, it's beautiful, and it is extreme. Every day, thousands of Alaskans go to work in extraordinary conditions. They risk life and limb just to do their job. We're talking about ship captains, bush pilots, and fishermen. Their work is difficult and oftentimes it's dangerous. And today I'm going to tell you that the image you have of these people that I'm describing is probably wrong. Shipping, fishing, and flying. These are jobs that are typically done by men, especially in extreme conditions. And Alaska is extreme. So today I'm going to tell you 3 stories about 3 women who stand strong in the face of these male-dominated industries that they work in. And I'm going to tell you, these women don't just thrive, they define what it means to be an Alaskan. 3 stories about community, family, and tradition, and the amazing women who live up to those ideals. So today we're going to start in the Bering Sea. Let me set the scene for you. It is January 10th, 2012, and it's the dead of winter. And there are 2 ships that are desperate to get to port. But as far as the eye can see, nothing but ice. In front of them, behind them, everywhere is ice. And it's negative 19 degrees outside. The wind is howling and the seas are frozen solid. Now at the helm of the larger ship is Captain Beverly Havlick. And this woman, she's on a mission to save a town. Now Captain Havlick, if she can't get to port, the more than 3,000 people that live in Nome, Alaska won't survive the winter. Now Nome is a small town on mainland Alaska. It's way up north on the Bering Sea, just outside of the Arctic Circle. Nome is so far north that, well, let's just say we don't go there very often. Nome has only one road leading out of town, and that road heads due north into the icy cold. Nome is so isolated that all of the fuel they need for the winter, fuel to heat their homes, to cook their food, to drive their cars, all of that fuel has to be delivered in the fall by sea before the Bering Sea ice is over. But on this particular year that we're talking about, that delivery had to be canceled due to a heavy storm. Well, by the time that storm had ended, it was already too late. And now, Nome is freezing to death. Another thing to keep in mind is that no one had ever attempted to deliver fuel through sea ice like this in the entire history of Alaska. Captain Havlick was making history in more ways than one. Now, Captain Havlick is escorting a Russian tanker called the Renda, who's trying to deliver the fuel. It was Captain Havlick's icebreaker, the Healy. It was her job to keep the Renda safe. Now, ice is dangerous for a ship, any ship, but for a small tanker like the Renda, it can be disastrous. Ice that's only 6 inches thick can damage a ship's propellers, her rudder, or even cement her in place. And there was another danger that they were looking at: weather conditions. Ice like this can get extremely dangerous when there's heavy winds, even hundreds of miles away, pushing on the sea ice on the outer edges. It's like compacting a snowball. Ice can get tight around a ship's hull too. And without an ice-capable vessel, the ice could crush that ship just like a tin can. Now, as I mentioned, Captain Havlick's job in the icebreaker is to create a safe path for the Rinda to travel through. And if she makes one mistake, the Rinda could end up spilling 1.3 million gallons of oil into the Bering Sea. And there's nothing easy about this. Because the ice moves and it shifts, it's almost like it's trying to keep the ships away from shore. But on this particular mission, it's like the ice was trying to choke the life out of Nome. Now, as soon as the Healy would clear a channel, the ice would close in behind her, squeezing the Rinda. And when it's bad, the two ships move along at a snail's pace. But when it's really bad, they actually lose ground, drifting further away from shore. By now, on January 10th, Captain Havlicek had already been on this mission for weeks, and things weren't looking promising. There were near misses. There were times when these two ships almost collided. There were moments where the wind-packed ice was so thick that they actually thought about turning around and leaving the Rinda in the ice for the winter. It felt like the whole world was holding its breath. Someone set up a Twitter account to give everyone a minute-by-minute details of their painfully slow progress, and their messages were grim. Some of them read, "Little progress today. Tough sledding towards Nome, still 100 miles away. The wind, the currents, the ice pressure continue to be a constant challenge." And it wasn't just the environment that was working against them. Remember, the Rinda is a Russian ship with a Russian crew being escorted by a U.S. military vessel. At times, these two ships were operating in windy ice with less than 60 yards of water between them. And if things couldn't get any more complicated, the captain of the Rinda refused to speak to Captain Havlicek directly. You know why? That's right, because she was a woman. The situation is looking hopeless. Even the New York Times had reported it's unclear if the Rinda will ever arrive. But Captain Havlicek was not going to give up. Slow and steady, day by day, she inched those two ships closer and closer to shore. And then finally, something amazing happened. The two ships found a rhythm. It was like two ballet dancers, having learned a difficult choreography, they began to move as one. Havlicek's ship would leap forward and break the ice, and the Rinda would slide in behind perfectly. Over and over again, they began to find their rhythm. They began to move as one. A Marine pilot overhead said it was like watching poetry that no one would ever see. And on January 13th, the citizens of Nome finally saw hope on the horizon. After 3 weeks and 350 grueling miles of relentless ice, the two ships had finally reached Nome. Their mission was a success, the town of Nome was safe, and they were going to survive the winter. Captain Havlicek had successfully navigated the dangerous waters of ice and of international relations. And to celebrate, the people of Nome did what anybody would do. They baked cookies. Because what else would you want after grueling conditions like this but fresh baked cookies? Here's the amazing part. When we asked her why she risked everything to save this town, she talked about growing up in a small town herself and how the people had to work together sometimes to get things accomplished. Despite having lived through a grueling and cruel couple of weeks, escorting what sounds like a very unpleasant person through dangerous waters, Captain Havlicek still rose above it all. And the thing that drove her was her sense of community. That community spirit, that sense of being in it together, that's what's so amazing about this state. Because there are a lot of towns in Alaska, just like Nome, that rely on community support for survival. Towns that are completely cut off from the rest of the world except by sea. Or more frequently, they're only accessible by air, which is the subject of our next story. So let's go to the skies.